What's up, everybody, and welcome to Rarity Games. This is Chris, and I'm over here talking with my friend
Eric.
and today we're going to be discussing live service games. Just about every publisher has one. They are a pillar of the industry in the previous generation and hopefully the next
current.
one. Well, current, previous.
Yeah.
But everybody has them, and not everybody necessarily likes them or handles them right, but we're going to get into that a little bit. What are some of your thoughts, Eric?
Well, to get it off, that thing's already bugging up. But no, live service games, well, big controversy, of course, but also stupidly popular.
Sure.
So it's a weird little contrast right there. But we got your games like Destiny and The Division, of course, and then you could even go to a wider spectrum, as you brought up to me earlier, Rainbow Six, and now even you could go down the lines to say Apex and Fortnite in their own way as a games as a service.
Sure.
And then games like Fallout, getting into the games as a service type. It's getting to be a really broad spectrum. And they're kind of following in the footsteps of your MMORPGs from back in the day, and there's so much to them, and it can be so good and so at the same time.
So I think one of the reasons that you're seeing it, like Eric said with the MMOs, there was a wave where every publisher had a big MMO game, whether it was a franchise MMO like Lord of the Rings or a Star Wars one, or just a random new IP. Everyone had an MMO game about 10 years ago, and they saw what WoW did. They saw how much money WoW was making off of selling a full game, selling a subscription to that game, selling DLC, and then microtransactions on top of that.
Yeah,
so
very true.
Triple and quadruple dipping. And everybody was a little bit envious and wanted to get in on that action.
Yeah, and now you're seeing a lot of that with the games as a service type model.
And just like with the MMOs and the game as service, a lot of MMOs launched and died and went away quietly because they didn't necessarily have the content. They weren't necessarily polished as way. It kind of has to be a perfect storm to end up getting that perfect recipe of content and user engagement and community feedback and interaction, because certain games will launch and have a very rocky launch, like as you've seen with Fallout 76, but the community around them is so strong that they end up kind of doing a little bit of a rocky comeback trail story kind of thing.
And you see that with a lot of the I don't want to say lesser, but like lower end developers, like the B teams and the double A teams, like in between there somewhere. But then the really I was gonna bring that up when you were mentioning it. The big you need money, and you need the egg to sit in the nest for a long time and just cook up. Like you need that baby in the oven for a long time, for a better term. And when it comes out, it needs to either be super polished or have that one thing that people will latch on to.
I completely agree, and I think a lot of kind of the shortcomings that we're seeing with live service games now is that they're launching very feature heavy, but not necessarily very content heavy.
Exactly.
Because it's almost as if the game was a pizza, they're giving you the crust first, and then they're like, no, wait a couple weeks, we got to scrape off the burnt part, and then we're going to put some sauce on it, and then I swear by the end of the year, you guys are getting cheese. I swear it.
Maybe in a year or two, you'll get some toppings. Maybe it may not be the toppings you like, but you'll get toppings.
So, speaking of it, let's get right into this.
That was a good analogy. I dig that one.
Thank you. Let's get into some of the big live service games of today. We're going to start with the daddy of them, Destiny 2. The granddaddy being Destiny 1. And a little bit of our background with it. I played Destiny 1 a very fair bit. I am a primarily single-player game, though.
Yes.
So I play most of my games as single player. I don't really group up a lot. I played at the end of the year one, so I still had Peter Dinklage as my ghost voice. I really loved it. I played the Taken King. It was just overall a solid game. Towards the end of that Destiny 1 span, though, they started to add more microtransactions on top of your standard DLC purchases, and they weren't necessarily as large as they had once been at launch. What are some of your thoughts on Destiny? 1.
Well, I mean, I love the game. To be real and honest with it, to get that off the start, because you're probably gonna hear me say a lot of meh/negative things about this game, and it's not that it was bad. It's not that they did anything wrong, but they did have Activision behind them, kind of hitting them with that money. Come on, guys. If you're gonna do this much content, if you're gonna take this long to do it, please make sure you can monetize it.
More so in Destiny 2 than in Destiny 1.
I'd say a little bit of both, because like I mentioned to you earlier when we were bringing up this topic to each other, with the whole, like the way they launched their DLCs, like the first drop was solid. They dropped 2 like half size drops around the same time as the season pass thing. But then they made you immediately. They weren't huge drops, and in my opinion, they should have been a little bigger. And then they decided, okay, we realized they should have been a little bigger. Let's give you the third drop, which was Oryx, right?
Was the Taken King?
Yeah, Taken King. Yeah, that's the name of it. Okay, I'm drawing a blank here because I'm thinking of Destiny 2, and it's not.
Been a couple years.
Yeah. And so the Taken King comes out, and that's a lot bigger, a lot more fruitful. Almost feels like another game in itself. Gives us a big, clean update with a lot of smoothing over, a lot of tweaks to the gameplay, a lot of new guns.
A lot of people considered the Taken King almost a soft reboot for the game.
Yeah, and
it kind of bookended, like it tied everything up really well.
I think Bungie even did, in a way. Instead of saying, oh, here's Destiny 2, let's say, here's Destiny 1.5. Yeah, exactly. And it's a lot more clean, and you guys are going to appreciate this a lot more. We're even going to start selling it as a bundle and a package, and that's $60 for everything. And that was very smart on their part. But then you see things like when they mentioned, like I mentioned to you earlier, the whole microtransaction thing. They dropped that. And this is where it got a little weird for me when they say, hey, guys, don't worry, we're not going to make you pay for any more updates. And that was a thing that they literally said to the players. And then 3 to 4 months later, they drop another announcement to say, hey, Rise of Iron's coming out. And it's like, oh, okay, so another cool free update? No. $30. And another add-on.
And this is what I think you're starting to see is like a big piece of what's considered a live service game is what they say and their engagement with the community.
Yes.
Because if you're having this constant stream of gameplay and updates and interaction with your community, if you say something, you better follow through on it.
Exactly.
And if you can't, you better be real upfront and real clear as to why right now you can't or in general you can't. Yeah. Because the community will eat you alive.
Especially this games as a service community.
Do you remember the Destiny 2 debacle where a certain level of grinding, you stopped getting as much XP for doing an action
once
in
you
strikes.
At a certain point, they start like nerfing your XP gains.
And they weren't necessarily as clear or as forthcoming as they should have been with this. And when
they should know better with some of them dudes out there data mining and stuff.
And when players in the community really got into it and started posting videos, and then people in the community that are streamers start asking the publisher what's going on with this and the developer what's going on with this, and they didn't have a good answer, you have a little bit of a bumpy time over there.
Yeah, it definitely was, and we've seen it a couple times through Destiny's life cycle, whether it be Destiny 1 or 2. It's happened a few times, and Destiny 2's had quite a few rocky moments with their updates and patches, and even more recently they've been doing, I'd say, a little bit better, but it was a little odd to me when they go, hey, check out the following. Yeah. Like, we just gave away the game to PS members. We're PS Plus members, and we're giving the game away super cheap for other stuff. And now we're gonna give you a new DLC. Great, I'm gonna buy this DLC. Now I beat it, most of it at least, and 90% of the content was wiped out real quick. Yeah. And I paid $40 for it. And then they're gonna say, oh, by the way, buy this annual pass. And it's like at around the same time, I'm like, wait. Didn't you just give me a bunch of content? Why am I buying an annual pass? And they're saying, oh, it's going to unlock a bunch of content throughout next year.
And it was a year 2 pass, not a year 1.
And that's what I mean. Yeah. It's just a little odd that, like, I get it. You need to make your money. You have a lot of developers out there grinding away. But there's so many people buying your content, and you have microtransactions and all this stuff. It's like, you can't give us, like, I know they started doing the Black Armory, and they added a few little things that were good size, like mini little chunks, like Snickers bites.
It starts,
but we need a Snickers bar once in a while for all the money that we're giving you.
It starts to
That's
feel,
my opinion.
for all the good they did with it, they also just messed up a lot of stuff. It's one step forward, one step back.
Exactly.
So as a single player, I played the game mostly in single player. I ran through it with 2 characters in Destiny 2. Did it within the launch month. Had fun with it. It was a fine game. It was a great shooter, as most Bungie shooters feel very responsive and Twitch shooting and all that.
Yes.
It was fun, and I was done with it in a month. I ran through all the content, and I got rid of it. I rented the game. I sent it back, and that was the end of the conversation.
And as you mentioned earlier, single player style of playing, and that is a good play for someone like you, and for someone like myself, where I tend to buy games digitally. And I play a lot with my friends, so I get a little more lifespan out of the game. I'll play it for a little longer, but I also feel a little more of that impact when 10 of my friends that I've been playing this game with for a year are all buying this DLC, and I want to buy the DLC as well. But then I'm also like, I'm kind of getting tired of grinding constantly for this stuff, and now you're telling me I gotta grind more, and you want me to do more stuff, and I just got done doing the raid, and I just maxed out my gear, and now you want to, and if I don't buy it, guess what? My cap is at a certain point, and now I'm stuck at this certain point, and all my friends are way past me, and I can barely play with them now.
And so, speaking as someone who played the game primarily at launch, it felt like a very content-like game.
Yes.
It felt like I ran through it incredibly fast. It felt like they wanted me to wait till next month and 2 months and 3 months later to come back for this extra content. And for that style of game, the way it felt to me, it didn't grab me like that.
Yeah.
I wasn't bought in. And the community almost from launch was waiting and wondering when their Taken King, like their Destiny 2.5, like mid-cycle reboot was going to come out.
Yes.
And to be talking that way and thinking like that at the launch of a game, it almost felt like half-baked, like there wasn't a full game
They weren't quite there yet, but they got just enough to let you play for a while they inserted a few more things.
And at the end of, I believe it was the end of year 1, they gave it away on the Blizzard store as well, because Activision Blizzard was trying to really push the PC port.
Yeah, and that shows the good graces that they're like. It's like Bungie going, hey, like we know we're trying, and I think that we're gonna see a lot more of that, and a lot more of what I was mentioning, like a lot more free chunks of DLC now that they've broken off from Activision. And I see a bright future for them. And overall, as you mentioned earlier, I think I'm going to give Destiny and Destiny 1 a thumbs up overall.
Yeah, Destiny 1 I would give 2 thumbs up. That was really a fantastic game. Destiny 2 I'll give 1. It was solid.
Yeah, okay.
You know what I mean?
Fair enough.
But
fair enough.
Their split from Activision makes me more hopeful for Destiny 3 because a lot of the little minuscule gripes the community, including myself, had with Destiny 2, like the shaders being one use. Yeah. Whereas in the previous game, you could keep dyeing your new armor the same color that you like so you looked really cool in your outfit. Well, now they're single use. You got to go use your silver dust and buy a microtransaction, and it almost felt like you were buying a game to have the option to grind and be served microtransactions. Yeah. Which didn't necessarily feel the best all the time.
Yeah, that's definitely something I'm looking forward to seeing what they do in the future.
Yeah, but I think they're going to learn a lot of lessons from this one.
Yeah, and they did try to get that whole MMO RPG style, which we mentioned earlier, and they did want to. I feel like the whole the DLC thing. When we get a whole chunk from an MMO RPG, we get a whole expansion. It feels like a whole game. And when we get a whole chunk from Destiny, unless you're a high tier player, there's no way in hell that feels like a whole game. Even then, when you're a high tier player, it doesn't really. It just feels like, oh, I finally got to the raid in a day and a half, and now I have to grind this over and over again until I get the max gear.
And even going back to Destiny 1 from what was the Moon expansion, House of Wolves, like one of their first DLCs. Yes. That was regarded as very content light. It just seems like the grinding is almost more of an emphasis on the mechanics than it is on any kind of story or anything. Yes. Which isn't necessarily bad, but not what a lot of people are looking for.
No,
we
were hoping for just a little more, and I'm hoping we see that with the future of Destiny.
Sure.
And I know we want to get into some other stuff.
Yeah.
So what do we got next here, Chris?
Speaking of games that came out that felt half finished, let's move on to Anthem. Anthem is one of those games that if you look at it from afar and run down the checklist
God, it looks nice.
I can fly, it looks really pretty, I have a mech suit and there's missiles and I can party up. Oh, this is good. Wait, it's BioWare, you say? Oh my god.
I don't wanna.
It had the potential to be something really special.
But God, it wasn't.
I highly recommend, I believe Jason Schreier over at Kotaku gave like a real in-depth article about the development of Anthem. If you guys are really into that and not familiar, I highly recommend checking that out. This game really suffered in development.
Yeah, and it's sad, man, because it's such a fun game. I played the beta, and I almost bought it, and I waited a week or two to see what the early reviews would be like, and immediately all the people that said they got through most of the content right away. Yeah. And a lot of the people, knowing game journalists that we see, they don't tend to get through those kind of games really fast.
Unless they have to.
They take their time. Yeah. They get through, unless they're doing a review, yes. Yeah. But they tend to, they're busy, and they also not always have enough time to be a legit super good gamer because they're not playing all the time, and it takes them a couple weeks to beat a game, and when they're saying 4 days into it, oh, I'm done and I only have the Stronghold left, and the Stronghold's kind of not
so the Stronghold's like their raid,
if you want to call it that,
ish but this is another game that it had such high potential, yes, but ended up just getting confused by itself and lost. Yes. This is a game that was built in a bubble. People that have worked on the game even said off to the side they were not allowed to acknowledge Destiny. They weren't allowed to compare it. They couldn't mention the word Destiny in its promotional offerings. They often get a sheet that says you can say this before launch when reviewing a game, and you can't say that. And that was one of the things that they didn't want the game compared to Destiny.
That's not okay.
Even though it obviously is a competitor of Destiny.
You gotta be real with your consumers, in my opinion. That's always something I like to see from developers when they say, "Oh, I got inspiration from this game and this game and this game," because it's more natural and it's more. Yeah, obviously you did, and I want to see that because I loved that game.
And because of those things, I think it shows that it's more of a game from 2014 than a game from 2019. It's got great graphics, it's polished amazingly, but there's so many little just group party online things it does wrong. Yeah. So me as a single player gamer, I hopped in to the demo, was flying around having fun, and I was with, I guess, 3 people that were grouped up, or 2 people that were grouped up, and they were mainlining the mission and sprinting. And I'm over here exploring, trying to look for a chest and complete some
and just chill
to do task list. And I keep getting warped into a loading screen to load to them wherever they are progressing the mission.
Can I just chill and be by myself?
And more importantly, the loading screens in Anthem are painful. They take minutes to load, and when it finally does, the party that I was trying to load into had already progressed to the next stage of the thing and would load again. I don't want to speak
too much on that because, as you said, we kind of avoided this game for the most part. So disclaimer there, we don't own the full game itself. So there probably is big updates by now that fix some of that. Not sure, but for the most part, you get the gist. It wasn't crisp at all.
I personally played 5 hours through the EA Access trial, and I'm glad I did because I was really going to buy this game. Yeah. And like we said, it's got so much potential, but as a single-player gamer, trying to disable parties and trying to play the game, you can only play it on easy, because if you try and play it solo in a private party by yourself, you're going up against creatures and bosses and beasts that were designed for 4 people to be hammering rockets and missiles at something. Yeah. So you would literally have to grind to kill like a level 3 or 4 enemy from the get-go. And it wasn't fun. It wasn't rewarding. It just seemed like they focused so much on the multiplayer that they completely neglected the single-player game.
The game itself, the actual fun parts of it. And I was going to say that when you said the rewarding part. Like, you don't see many guns there that you're like, oh my god, I need that gun. Like in Destiny, you see your exotics, and even a lot of your legendaries, you'll see your friend with it, or you'll know about it from hearsay, and you're like, oh, I can't wait till I get that drop.
Yeah.
Whereas the Anthem was like, oh, cool, I can get one of the 6 or 7 abilities that my character has, and that's where the fun gameplay lies. When really, like, you're using your gun 95% of the time, can I at least get something hot that I want to fucking tear people up with?
So most of the javelins, while having unique kind of skills, you can swap between them. They didn't even feel necessarily that unique. They almost felt it was like one class that kind of just skewed slightly more fast or slightly more melee. It wasn't exactly like a completely different build.
Not at all.
That being said, in going back to the loot, they had a real problem at launch with the way, like, the random number generation, the RNG as the insiders call it, was set up, because you would be a low level and getting uncommon items. You wouldn't be getting that, like, oh, I'm level 5 and I just found this really cool purple weapon. No, you need to be level 20 and grind 20 levels to get a slightly different weapon.
Yep.
And the whole point of these kind of live services games are to engage you and really keep you coming back for that fun loot drop, to scratch that itch, almost Diablo-esque, hey, I'm going to dungeon crawl and find something cool and random on this run.
Yeah, very true.
It missed the mark almost completely, and I think sales-wise, EA has openly said they were disappointed by the game. They're still saying they're going to support it, but that game can easily be picked up for $15 now.
And it may just fall off the map with the way that some of the devs have been talking and looking. But I mean, to keep it short and simple for the most part, this is why we're having this conversation at all. This game is the prime example.
Yep.
And Fallout 76, another one of those, which we're going to get into very shortly.
Oh, I got some things to say about Fallout.
Of course we do. But it like, you compare something like this to Destiny, and God, they needed to be way more prepared.
So,
and even Destiny has its own issues. And if you see a game that's as well made, as well polished, and as well put together as Destiny, having issues from the fans, you really thought this was going to work out. And I mean, to not linger on this too much, if you want to, talk about it a little more, but I want to get over to the Division, because that's another one that is,
definitely
for the most part, a success story.
So just 2 quick things about Anthem. One, game is a BioWare-made game.
Yeah, single-player, story-driven people.
Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic. They have Mass Effect. They have some huge roots of really incredible deep story based games, and it feels like all those people that made those games are no longer at BioWare, which makes me sad, which makes me very sad. 2, their kind of live game Cataclysm event that they've been teasing for quite some time in their developer streams and like on community boards and stuff like that has been pushed back multiple times. It's supposed to be a really cool idea that like a cataclysmic storm will attack a certain part of the map, spawn high-level enemies, and permanently change that part of the map, which sounds really great and intriguing. But they're so busy trying to squash other bugs, like the PS4 crash bug, where it would literally hard reset your PS4. I personally have never come across another game that would hard crash a console and then force your hard drive to be reconfigured or what were they doing? Rescanned. So, I mean, I wonder if Anthem has so much stink coming off of it that they can even come back at all.
Yeah, I don't see it happening.
If anybody out there in the audience is an Anthem fan, or you have any feedback, please sound off in the comments, because we'd love some interaction.
Yeah, please.
Because for what I've played, it wasn't what I thought it was going to be, which isn't bad, but it's just the reality of the situation that it wasn't engaging.
And I'll give it one thing: it felt like a good game. It played like a good game, and I could see myself very much enjoying this style of game, being able to fly around, and the map was brilliant. But it just, there was not enough, and I knew based off the beta that there was not going to be enough. As
with not all, but most of the other live services game we're seeing, at launch it almost comes out half done.
Yeah, and that's not even just the live service games. There's a lot of games now. Mainly the live service games, but there's quite a few now that have been doing that because of the ability to patch later.
It's almost like they plan because they're expecting to have this long tail that they don't have to finish the game all at once. They can kind of piecemeal come out with it. And for people that are really hardcore in a franchise or really into something new coming out, they mainline it and just burn through it. And then they're like, oh, I just spent $60 on a game for 15 hours of content, and you just want me to run the same missions over and over again.
All right, let's hop on over to the Division. I wanna talk about this because this is definitely one of the ones that are great. I mean, like the Division was the first Division. I absolutely loved that game. It didn't. I wouldn't say it lasted as long for me as Destiny did.
It had a little bit of a bumpy launch, the original Division, but not nearly as bad as some of the other things we're seeing.
But God, this game's so sick, and it's more realistic than Destiny in a way, and that's what makes it work. You're not trying to be like Destiny. You're trying to be a games as a service shooter. MMO style, but in your own way, in a real world.
And I think it shows kind of the difference in focus, because Ubisoft has said last year that they were focusing on having longer tails for their games.
Yes.
Supporting their live games.
And God, they've been doing a good job.
Much longer. You look at Rainbow Six Siege, that game came out too. Warm to mixed reviews. It didn't blow the doors off anything, but it was certainly a game that happened.
Yes.
And they supported it and updated it and polished it and did it over and over and over and over again, to the point now where there's so many operators and so much has happened in game that it's almost like it's a completely different game from the game that launched. And there are people that have maybe only touched it initially that come back to it much later.
That happened to me a few times.
And it's completely different, and it's still engaging. Yeah. So shout out to Ubisoft for really sticking to a product and really polishing it.
Yes, and like I literally, like, I think 3, maybe 4 times. Every time I picked that Division 1 back up, it really did feel like another game. They boosted it, they tweaked it, they put way more bosses in it, they put way more weapons, they added sets of armor instead of just exotics.
And they went so much. They went through multiple series of updates. Most of the content was free, but there was a DLC pass associated with the first one. And a lot of that DLC pass kind of gated off some of the community because they weren't going to get into it. But if you did play some of that, so that DLC that came from the Division 1 was arguably some of the best parts of the game.
Great.
The survival DLC in Division 1.
Yeah, you love that.
I put hundreds of hours just into that. It was really fantastic. They took a mode that wasn't necessarily in the game and kind of just came at it from a different angle, and it was amazing. And they took all those lessons and brought it over to the Division 2. So there is a pass in the Division 2 for content, but all the content is free. The pass is simply just gating your access to it based off a point. So I believe it's like 30 days or something like that. The DLC is exclusive to the holders of the pass. Yeah. And they're promoting it from a community standpoint, where if your team or your clan runs a raid and does it in a certain amount of time and beats something special, they hang your banner in the White House, like, in-game. It's really amazing what they've done with engagement with their community.
So. And if you guys check it out here. You mind scrolling down a little bit?
Oh, absolutely, my friend.
On the side here, not too much. On the side, go back up. Go back up. On the side where you see the state of the games. Up. Stop. On the side. Look at that.
The videos.
Yes, thank you. I can't see them on that. That's why I was asking.
Gotcha.
So like you see the state of the games. They're already at 128. This game came out, what was it, March?
Yes, March 15th.
And they're in July. It's only 3 months in. There are 128 state of game updates. That is beautiful community communication. That is incredible. They're even at the point where they're about to recap. As you see, they just recapped our first episode. So they're going back and saying, hey, look how our game was when it launched. Now look at our game now.
They call episode 1 their first DLC. It's like episodic
but
content.
I'm saying they're recapping. It says state of the game recap, so they're going back to the release date and content and all that, and they're showing you, hey, like, this is what we had, and now look where we're at. And with this 128 updates in, there's communities on Facebook dedicated to this game, just like many live service games, and they love it. They'll go on and on about it.
And shout out to the Division 2 personally from me, because it is a live service game that I can play as a single player gamer. I can run around and have a tremendous amount of fun. It feels like I'm making progress. I'm unlocking skills. I'm beating bosses. There's a tiered enemy structure. There's a tiered loot system. It seems like they took every lesson they could possibly learn from the first division and implemented it in the best way. And some of the minor feedback systems that they got, that like certain missions were a little grindy or certain guns weren't necessarily right, they're on Reddit posting with community moderators.
Yeah, and they're there with them. The devs are there. If you want to hit the bottom, I'll bring it back up. And then we'll talk about these episodes that they're dropping. Like, they're already planning 3 episodes, and they're gonna be big, and we know they're gonna be big because it's just like the Division 1. They were husky. They had their own game modes added and all this stuff, and that's one price for the DLC season.
And as you said, it's adding new loot, new weapons, new mechanics, not just maybe necessarily tweaking and rehashing some previous stuff.
Yeah.
The content will be free eventually, even if you do not buy the pass. So there is no breaking up their community. The pass itself is literally only saying, "Hey,
access.
You're an early access player. You're a special
my God,
guy."
That's fucking awesome. That is awesome.
Because
that is what games as a service need. I mentioned this with Destiny, and I talked about how it felt and how you feel like you feel like, oh, thank God I got new content, but God, I feel like I'm kind of getting ripped off here.
So, and taking it a step in a slightly different direction. So this game has so much content, and I've spent so long in game, I'm more inclined to buy a microtransaction and get a really cool hat or a backpack or whatever.
Yeah, you're treating me right. I will be happy to give you something.
It's almost like when you go to a nice restaurant and you have a great experience from a waiter or a waitress, and you have that wonderful rapport going. You're more inclined to give them a bigger tip to help them out because they went above and beyond. You feel you should go above and beyond.
Yeah, and in my opinion, that's just the way the world works. It's like you hook me up, I got your back.
And not only
that, you scratch my back, I scratch yours.
And not only that, it shows in the reputation of the company and in just the overall temperature of the community. Ubisoft fans usually are pretty positive about Ubisoft games. There's certain, little things like rehashing Assassin's Creed games over and over and over again that aren't necessarily the best thing, but they come out and they still support the heck out of it forever.
Forever. Every Ubisoft game. We talked about this with Rainbow Six Siege. There's
I fell off the Assassin's Creed series for a long time, and then they brought me back with Odyssey, and there's so much huge content, and then I'm going back and looking at some of the older ones that I missed, thinking, hey, maybe they deserve a second look.
Yes.
So because they have these long tails, it's more of an investment, and if you kind of watch a lot of the sales and stuff, you'll see that a lot of the Ubisoft games don't necessarily go on sale as much or as often because it is a quality product that they're going to support for a longer time. So it garners that little bit of extra money.
Yeah, and it's just great. I mean, I got to give credit to Ubisoft all together, and to give the developers this game. Massive Games killed it. They literally, they've taken Massive Games doing what they do. It has literally bled into the other Ubisoft games like Assassin's Creed, and Tom Clancy has been sharing, all those games have been sharing ideas with each other, and you see, like you said, with Assassin's Creed Odyssey, they bring in that style of games as a service style into a single player story driven game, and then they don't screw you with it either. They're giving you just enough. They don't
microtransaction you to death, which is the thing.
Exactly.
You nowadays, with the way it is, you expect a certain level of you can buy something in game, but they're not forcing it down your throat. You don't have to do it. One big shout out to the Division 2 before we wrap up the Division 2 is not to give away any big story plot points or anything, but once you hit level 30 and finish the primary story of that game opens up and adds a new faction that changes the whole game in a way that no one thought when it launched it would do. There's a third faction in that game that add robots and all kinds of crazy stuff in after you beat the game. So the game turns itself into a 2.0 game after you finish the story.
That's awesome. Kudos.
Shout out to Ubisoft, man. Crushing it.
Run it over to our last main topic of the game, of the games as a service style. And another one that was a little messy.
No, this was a lot messy. This was
you're right. A lot messy. You got me.
I was a beta tester for this game. I pre-ordered this game. I am a huge Fallout fan.
I was just going to say, just to make sure everyone's clear, Chris is a huge Fallout fan.
I played every time on the Xbox One that they had available in their early test phases, I put about 25 hours in this game in beta before it even came out.
That's crazy. You were going harder right away.
I felt there's definitely something right. Todd Howard said it, that there's something there in this game. And he's 100% right. Mechanically, there's something there. There's a reason to keep coming back and playing this game. In the same token, the game also keeps trying to stop you from playing the game because it would crash constantly, it would disconnect constantly, and it would just have weird little glitches. Now, that being said, a lot of this stuff was addressed over the course of the game, like over the life of the game. But within, I want to say, the first 8 weeks, 12 weeks, game was arguably a garbage fire. The fact that I had paid $60 for this game at launch really hurt me from the inside. That being said, they got a lot of criticism and a lot of feedback about how bad this garbage fire was.
Yes, they did.
To the point where there was a problem with bobby pins in the game that you use for lockpicking.
I remember
Bobby
this.
pins
This
were
was
so
hilarious.
heavy that 10 bobby pins weighed as much as a gun.
It was so goofy. Like, are you kidding me?
So
I need the lockpick, goddammit.
So some fan sent Todd Howard a box of bobby pins and said,
Ah!
here, weigh these.
And oh my god, I forgot about that. It's good every time. I've heard that maybe 3 or 4 times now, and I still love it.
As with many other live services game, we're seeing the trend that although systems-wise there was something there to start with this game, the game came out half-finished. It felt like it was missing a lot of content. Story-wise, the story itself isn't bad, but the way they decided to deliver the story, there were no NPCs. Every NPC was dead, and everything was either a robot giving you a mission, a holotape giving you a mission, a poster giving you a mission, or just a clue to send you on a mission.
Oh man, and God, do I remember that when they announced the NPCs at E3, and the crowd yells, but I'm thinking in the back of my head, really?
So,
you're gonna cheer for NPCs that should have probably been there from the start?
About 9 months after the game launched, it seems like they're giving us the other half of the game.
And
they're giving us the dialogue choices that literally weren't in the game at all at launch. There's no dialogue choices at all, which that was the first Fallout game not to have any dialogue choices.
Yeah, which is
ridiculous
because that's part of what a Fallout game is.
That's also the first Fallout game not to have any human NPCs. So in a wasteland that felt empty, they made the world empty. So it was even more hollow than you could have imagined. Like I said, there was cool things. You would go to a radioactive dam or a logging plant or something, and you'd fight a couple.
It's a great map.
The map arguably was the best part of the game because it was so huge.
Yeah, and I was going to say, this is, as you're obviously about to get into, this is a great example of a games as a service that was like almost like a fuck you at the start, but then they realized they screwed up, they knew that something was wrong, and it's like a great comeback story. I see this one coming back hard. With this new update, there's so much that they're going into.
Speaking of comebacks, this very much took a play out of No Man's Sky book. That this was an absolute rough, horrible launch. I believe within 3 weeks of the game being launched, it was half price. Like it was bad. Bethesda,
they were handing it out with Xbox Ones at Walmart and shit. They had overstock of the game, and they had to give them away.
They were banning them to Xboxes. Yeah,
my God.
There was pictures of game shops over in the UK or I believe Germany, one of the two, where they would, if you bought a used controller, they were giving you the game. They were trying to give that game away.
I didn't hear that one. And that's crazy.
That's actually kind of funny enough. What sparked the rumor initially that everyone thought the game was going to go to free to play because so many places were trying to just literally give it away, get it out the door.
I could still see it happening
because
in the
Fallout games and Bethesda games in general, typically a lot of people buy those games. They're big worlds to run around and have a great sandbox to play in. But the problem was when they went from that single-player sandbox to that multiplayer online shared universe, my glitch all of a sudden is affecting your game.
Oh my God, I know.
And it was T-posing enemies, and you'd wander into an area.
Is this seriously an early age PS3, Xbox 360 game? Like we're just testing out internet. Oh wait, PS2. Sorry.
And what even made it a little bit harsher was as a constant Fallout 4 player, I would regularly hop into Fallout 4 just for fun. In many places in Fallout 76, the graphics were actually worse than Fallout 4. So it kind of was like a backhanded sort of game to come out that no one really asked for it, no one really wanted it, but there was some kind of mechanics in there that was good.
Yeah.
Running like those toxic areas with a couple random guys was actually fun.
Oh, super.
You would come across other survivors because every person in this game was a live, real person.
Yeah.
And they would end up passing you old weapons or giving you food or ammo or whatever.
Yeah,
so
the story about the guys dropping off awesome items like at the very beginning where they know players spawn.
At the beginning of the vault when the game starts, there were players that would give away stuff, set up like a shelter to help people start out.
And that's a cool community in a game like this.
And there were other players that added specifically would leave their systems on and just be vendors. And they would set up containers and stuff for people to go through and just buy. And
that's awesome.
Taking that community feedback, Bethesda then implemented a sales system where you can set up a vending machine at your little mini camp.
Oh, God, that's awesome.
As another player, I can go to your camp, and if you want to sell an item and you're off questing somewhere, you can do that now.
Yeah.
And also, I can fast travel to your camp now. Before, you couldn't fast travel. You would have to wander around and stumble across people in the world. And they'd usually either have a little wave emote or they'd have a headset and say something.
Yeah.
So they're constantly going back and kind of fixing their mistakes, their faux pas, and polishing the game. And there was a lot of mistakes. Initially, when the game launched, on PC, there was no push to talk. So people would just constantly be hearing things through their mic. Dogs barking, children crying, people talking to their significant others. People would quit the game and still be feeding sound through the mic and through the game.
That is a whole nother level of fuckery.
There were problems where people submitting support tickets to the game then got access to other people's credit card information. Please go watch the Fallout 76 video on the Internet Historian if you really are super into it.
Yeah, he did a really good job of breaking that down. Definitely check that out. Internet Historian, he has some great videos. I think he did a part 2, I believe, of a Fallout 76. I'm not 100% on that.
I'll have to check that out then. I saw the first one.
Now, to mention this, the Nuclear Winter update. What was the full title of the update?
I want to say maybe 2 or 3 months ago, they released a roadmap that detailed a spring update, which was Boy Scout themed and like kind of
I recall
they called it the Sheep Squatch.
Okay,
it kind of was like a Sasquatch sort of thing, and it was just they added backpacks for more storage because when the game launched, they could only have like a couple 100 pounds of stuff in your storage because the game has to track all of your items. So that as they tried to up your storage, it would break the game.
I remember. All right,
they got around that.
What I'm saying though is, what do you recall? Was it the most recent update?
Nuclear Winter.
That's the whole title of it? Okay.
Correct.
So I know there's a mode that the Nuclear Winter mode, which is the new Battle Royale mode for all you Battle Royale fans, and I saw people out the woodwork, some of the biggest streamers with the likes of Shroud going hard in this game. They loved it, and I was watching some gameplay on this. I haven't had to get any hands on myself yet, but wow, did this game have a great Battle Royale style.
It really did.
You know me, I'm a big fan. I've play a ton of different Battle Royales, and this was incredible. The style, they even put a little building elements there from I guess Fortnite style,
very
to a higher scale.
Light building because you're limited because it is still a survival game.
But it is on a good scale where you could like build like little structures real quick for yourself, like setups for you and your team to rock out in. And they like the amount of stuff you can do, the bomb setup where you get the briefcase and the keys, and like there is so many things in that I just the Battle Royales have never seen anything like it, and it is a amazing way of integrating a game, a Fallout game into something.
And
like
one of the
that.
complaints originally from when the game launched, the perk card system, where you have packs of cards that you apply rather than picking skills from like a tree or a chart.
I'm glad you brought that up.
Felt very awkward initially in the main game in the story, whereas in the Battle Royale, it's made for it. It literally feels like it was made for it.
Instead of everyone, like you're still basically on a level playing field, but there's a little bit of RNG at play there, where you're going to go and you're going to get, as you level up, you're unlocking a bunch of perk cards. Then you will be able to basically essentially create your own class, almost like a Battlefield or
Correct.
Battlefront
Correct.
style of creating your own class, but on a higher scale.
So-
you have a certain amount of points, and then they allow you to throw in different styles of perk cards. You could go along the lines of, okay, I'm a shotgun runner, right? I'm going to throw in a boost to shotgun damage when I am under half health.
And you get
I'm going to have, what's up?
You get these cards from leveling up as well,
I
so
said
it's
that.
incentive to keep playing.
Yes, I said that. Now and then you could just then you have that, so then you can get bullet spread, and then and you can get like
There's one that's pharmacist where you're able to search already open containers and find additional items like medicine, stim packs.
So you can go along the lines of like you guys basically get the point for the most part, but it's like you could set up a more assault rifle style based class with 10 different perk cards that go along that style, and then throw in a little mix of grenades or a healing style or this or that, and that is awesome. And you load that up, and then you can make different types of classes essentially, and then start every match with those kinds of setups.
So
it's incredible.
Early in the game, one of the big criticisms of Fallout 76 was it's a game that doesn't know what it wants to be.
Yes.
It's got survival elements, it's got RPG elements, it's got adventure elements, it's got a little bit of everything, and it didn't do anything great, but it kind of just tried to mash everything together. This perk card system and a lot of the improvements that they've made to the shooting and the combat system really come out and shine a lot better in the Nuclear Winter. Also, in the Nuclear Winter, you don't have to really play the single-player game if you don't want to. You can go in on this. That being said, you do still accrue experience and caps for the single-player game. So it does affect each other back and forth to give you that reason to, hey, maybe I'll jump in and check this out. You have to go into the single-player campaign part to level up to increase your perks to aside higher quality perk cards.
And all these different mechanics and systems they're implementing are like, this is what you want in these kind of games. And and I'm really glad that they're doing that kind of stuff. They definitely, you can tell from the beginning, they had the right idea. But God, they should not have released that game the way it was, because it's never going to get the light of day that it deserves at this point.
Todd Howard has a IGN Unfiltered interview with Ryan McCaffrey. Check that out. But they said they knew it was going to launch with some bugs, some troublesome nature, but they could not possibly expect the problems that it was having.
Yes.
There was one notorious instance early on, not even that early on, that players coordinated on the server, because you have open mic chat, you can just talk to whoever on the server.
Yes.
That they launched 3 nukes simultaneously, because there are 3 nuclear launch sites on that giant map in Fallout 76. In doing so, completely crashed their servers from Bethesda's end. So when you're using a feature in the game and it breaks the game, it's problematic. That game realistically should have launched in early access. That being said, I am very pleased that they have continued to support this game and they are slowly making it better.
I'm sure you're very happy because God, you were mad about this game. You felt so just.
I'm not a person that goes and comments on forums really or engages with the developers in that like direct fashion. I sought them out and gave them a piece of my mind. I tried to do it respectfully. I maybe wasn't that respectful.
Of course, but you know.
And
they, in a way, they deserve that, and I'm sure they got plenty of it. And then the whole the canvas bag controversy and this and that. I'm not gonna get into it. If you want to check out like all the details, like we said, you can go to Internet Historian. And then if you want to get a little more of a deep dive, like Chris said as well, the Podcast Unlocked episode, I believe, is or IGN
Unfiltered.
IGN interview with Todd Howard and Ryan McCaffrey. That was a really good look inside of what's going on. If you don't know who Todd Howard is, he's basically the father of the Fallout and the Skyrim and the Elder Scrolls games. So I mean, this game I'm just so happy that it's coming back. I recently thought about picking up a copy. I played a good bit of it,
especially since it's a bargain price now.
Yeah, I played it on the 7-day trial around E3. I really enjoyed getting back into it. I played the beta, and I loved that at the time, even when it was buggy and crazy, and there'd be a random ghoul that was visibly there, but you could just walk through them.
Sure.
And there's a set of full armor just floating in the sky, and it was crazy. Now it's.
They fixed a lot of the game. There is still a certain amount of jank to the game because it's a Bethesda game. There's always a certain amount of goof.
Yeah, but we could always deal with that. All true Bethesda fans know that there's the jank to the game.
Sure.
You can deal with some jank when there's a level of fidelity in a game that you're never going to get anywhere else.
Yeah.
And that's just how it is. And this kind of games is a service game. Now that it's fixed and tweaked and better, they could have had a better launch date. So this is the kind of shit we're looking for when it comes to this, especially on the free end. Yep. They kept handing out this DLC, and they're handing out updates because they know they screwed up, and they're giving us what you should have got in the first place.
It took them a long time to acknowledge that, though, because initially when they had all the problems at the beginning, that first 90 days, 3 months, it was very rough. They weren't really engaging with the community the way they wanted to.
Scared, I'm sure.
People were reporting problems, and stuff was just going haywire, and stuff wasn't getting addressed. They didn't. From the outside, it looked like they didn't have a clear plan to address the situation, and I think a lot of the audience got angry and left. Once they released that roadmap, once they started having regular Twitch stream kind of live sessions and updates, they really started to nail down where they wanted to go with the game. And I think with a lot of these games of services, not just Fallout, but all of them, is if you don't go into this with a roadmap and a clear plan, you're not going to get anywhere really good. Or if you do, it's by sheer luck.
And if you aren't prepared 100%, please, God, release in early access or give us some long-term beta testing or multiple testings and get some players with some hands-on, load those servers up, get stress test the crap out of your game, and then once it's ready, release the full game.
The supposed beta tests and stress tests for Fallout 76 were 2 weeks before the game launched. That is not an adequate amount of time to adjust any kind of bugs
they've
or
extended
balance
it, and it
anything.
still wasn't enough. I think when they extended it and it did not get any better, they should have said, okay, let's back this up. Let's put the game, to next year, and we'll give you guys some more tests.
Not to go off on a tangent, I think Bethesda has a lot of satellite studios now, and I think they have a lot of projects going on, and they've got a lot of kind of buns in the oven. They got a lot of stuff going on, and this one maybe necessarily didn't get the attention out of the gate that it should have.
Yes.
But with their new content, the Wastelanders update, they're bringing human NPCs back, and they're bringing dialogue changes back. Yeah. Which, to me, as a longtime Fallout fan, those are two basics of the series that should have been there from the beginning. I'm very glad to see them kind of giving it that Taken King Fallout 1.5 kind of feel, where
very much so.
They're giving us the rest of the game. We've had the burnt crust for a while. Now they're giving us that sauce and cheese.
Yep.
We're getting
there. And so that's we're giving you guys some obviously the big names, but also some great examples of what to and what not to expect from these kind of games. And in the future, if people want to keep getting at this, they know what to look at, and they know what to see, and they know what to do when it comes to making games like this. And I really hope that in the future, if we continue down the road of games as a service the way it is, that we don't have companies making these kind of mistakes anymore. Yeah. And to run it back just a little bit, we said Destiny, great, thumbs up for the most part. Then we're gonna get into Anthem, obviously. Thumbs down for the most part.
Yeah, I'm unfortunately I'm kind of almost 2 thumbs down on Anthem. It's real sad. It's real sad.
And then to get into the Division, I mean I know you're probably doubling up on both Division 1 and 2.
Yeah,
you're gonna
totally.
say 2
I'm
for
2
both.
thumbs up on both.
And
of them.
I'm gonna say about probably around the same. I haven't gotten too much into the Division 2 yet, but I already know that they take care of their community. They do a good job of fixing any issues that they run into.
Sure. In terms of just being a complete product of the past year or so, Division 2 launched the most complete live service game.
Of course.
There was the most content to it. It was the most polished, and it was the most able to dump as much time in it as you wanted to, or as little time in it as you wanted to, and it was still rewarding no matter what you did in that game.
Yeah, I'm gonna say if Ubisoft's got it down for the most part, and we're talking about Rainbow Six Siege, bringing elements of that into Assassin's Creed, and like so much, like they're going hard, and they have been. They did the Ghost Recon thing. I wasn't as much of a fan of the Ghost Recon style. They kind of like it wasn't as fulfilling. It was more repetitive than
For-
the Division.
For the way that some people play, it was great, but for
Yes.
necessarily the way I play, it wasn't for me. It was a
Yeah.
great game, but it just wasn't targeted at
And-
me, which is okay.
Yeah.
Not everything's
And
for everybody.
I think that's going to switch up a little bit with Breakpoint. I think they're going to do a good job on this next one.
Yeah.
I'm going to say Ubisoft, keep making those games as a service. You guys are killing it, and they're a good example to look at with that. Bungie as well. I have a good feeling about them. EA, if they get up to bat again, be cautious. If you go to buy an EA games as a service type of game, I know they have other ones that are more sports-esque. Apex is pretty good if you want to call that a games as a service. But I'm gonna say be careful.
I
EA.
would in general caution the audience. Read a review, wait till the game launches, maybe a week into, not even a couple, maybe a week, and just see how it's running, what's going on. Because there's so many live service games that have problems out of the gate. It's worthwhile to read a review. You don't have to pre-order.
Yes.
I mean, everything's available digitally nowadays. We're not going to run out of stuff.
No, exactly. That's definitely a thing you got to be careful of. I know that you love a certain software developer, you love a certain company. They always pull out good games, but be cautious with those pre-orders. You may not be happy when you end up with it, and that Fallout 76 is a prime example. And I'd say beginning of Fallout 76, 100% a thumbs down.
I'm giving it 2 thumbs down, and I would have turned both of your thumbs down too.
So and then
but they brought it back.
Getting into the towards the end of it, I'm gonna give it a 1 thumb up, and we're gonna say it's definitely getting there.
One sideways.
Right, it's wiggling, but we're getting there, and I think that they're gonna look good in the coming years. So check it out. Don't be afraid to check out Fallout 76 if you're a Bethesda fan in general.
If you have any live service games that you think of that you guys play, please leave them in the comments below.
That you enjoy, yes. Yeah. The ones that are prime examples of a kick-ass games as a service game that you played 100 plus hours.
Talking to a friend about this, he actually mentioned back from the Xbox 360, Kingdoms of Amalur.
Oh yes, perfect example.
Deep cut from
great.
Previous gen.
And there's a lot more out there that we didn't really mention. We just wanted to give those good examples of what was wrong, what was right, and if it's worth digging into these kind of games. Give you guys an idea of what to expect if you want to try out a games as a service title.
So thanks for checking out our video, guys. This is pretty much it for us this evening. I'm Chris.
And I'm Eric, and thank you so much for checking out Rarity Games. Make sure to like the video, subscribe if you enjoy our content, drop a comment if you like. If you want us to dig into any topic or subjects that you like, or even if you want us to break down a certain series or something you really want to know more about, we got you guys. And as always,
keep on gaming.
Have a good one, guys.